This is one of the most interesting Transformers collaborations out there. The Canon Transformers Optimus Prime R5, a very unique figure, and I kind of love it. The camera mode looks amazing. They really managed to nail the look of an actual Canon camera, and the robot mode, well, it's definitely interesting, that's for sure. I did manage to get this figure with the help of the people over at Bai. I'll talk more about that later. Now, Transformers have always done many interesting collaborations with other companies. We had the Transformers info bar, which turned into a licensed Japanese cell phone. I did a video on that, by the way. There's a Ghostbusters Optimus Prime and Evangelion Optimus Prime. There have been several other IPs Transformers have collaborated with also, and even this one. Now bear with me as I talk about the packaging, because I feel like in this case it is very important. Straight away, it has a very sleek design to it, and it feels like packaging you would get when you go to steal a camera from the store. I mean, buy a camera. It's in an all black color with a very minimum design, giving it that professional look, because the Canon R5 is a very professional camera. It's like $4,000, which is a lot. For example, my Sony a7 III cost like $2,000 when I got it. On the front, you have the figure in both modes, with a subtle white glow around them. One side, you have an image of Optimus about to take a picture of you for his cringe compilation, and on the other side, you have an image of the camera mode. On the top is basic text, and on the back is mostly all in Japanese, so I can't read any of that, but you do get some basic content stuff. Out of the packaging, the camera mode looks gorgeous, just like you, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It looks just like a real camera, and as a photographer, my mind is forcing me to handle this like a real camera. I immediately put the lens cap on as soon as I took it out of the box. My mind goes straight into photographer mode, despite me knowing this is a piece of plastic, which, by the way, this feels very light, and that keeps throwing me off every time I pick this up because real cameras have actual weight to them, but this is a toy. The lens cap on here looks just like the lens cap of an actual camera. The texturing on here really sells it, and that Canon logo is done very well. I could easily see this being mistaken for a real lens cap. These bits, however, don't actually close like they would on a real lens cap. It's all just molded into place. And putting this on the lens is also very awkward to do. It takes a few tries to get it right, and as you can see, I'm struggling. Underneath it though, we can't see the front of the lens, and it is made of some pretty decent quality translucent plastic. Obviously, they're not going to use real glass on here, but just like a real camera, this is going to get fingerprints on it when you touch it. It's also somehow dusty despite the lens cap having been on there the entire time. Now this section around here on the red line is actually pretty loose. This separates pretty easily, which is kind of annoying, and it is necessary for the transformation. Further down, you have some nice texture over here, replicated very well from an actual camera. And further down that, you have these ridges for the focus and zoom areas. This is also done very well and goes all the way throughout. You also get some nicely printed numbers and letters closer to the bottom of the lens. You can't actually turn this to zoom like you would with a real lens, obviously, because it is a toy. You get some nicely replicated sliders for the focus and the stabilizer mode. And over here, you have some of the nicest metallic silver I have seen on a figure. Here, we can actually take the lens off to get a better look at this. The silver on here is done incredibly well. It looks like it's made of real metal. Here it is next to an actual camera lens. This is one of my Sony lenses, and as you can see, this does look very real. This entire area looks like how an actual camera should look, and I like how they included the little connectors over here as well as these foam molded in screw pieces, which was also done incredibly well. A lot of care was given to even the tiniest aspects of detail on this figure. Now the body of the camera has a classic Canon texture to it. A majority of it is on the front, while the rest of it is on the side where you would hold it from, some on the other side over here, and a little bit on the back. And once again, the texture replicated on here is done incredibly well. The hot shoe area at the top of the camera looks very realistic with that silver paint. Once again, you can't actually connect a real flash to it. It's not going to fit. This Optimus Prime figure is smaller than an actual R5 camera. Now all the text and symbols on here are done incredibly well. These are exactly what you would see on an actual camera. Once again, this metal area on this side also looks really good with the faux screws. Some more of those connection bits. The area where the sensor and shutter would be are completely solid, and the viewfinder at the back is completely solid, but it does have this reflective piece on there, which is a nice touch. Now on a real Canon camera, this is a display that you can pull out, but you can't really do it over here. You can sort of replicate that if you partially transform the figure, but it does look kind of weird that way. Underneath though also looks like what you would get on a real camera. You get this molded area for the battery. It doesn't actually function though. And you get this area for a shoe mount. Although once again, you won't actually be able to put this on there and screw it in. It is a little too small for one. They even managed to put this joystick at the back with the right grippy details. Now you can see some blue bits of the robot mode seeping through the figure, but honestly, in my opinion, that's not really that big of a deal. Now what is really cool is that the shutter button up at the top here is actually pressable. Along with that, you get 3 working dials. You have this one up here, this one, as well as the one at the back. This thing is a perfect replica of a real camera, and here it is right next to my Sony a7 III that I use for my photography. Now let's get to the transformation. Now the first thing we want to do to transform this figure is to pull out this section, and then we can flip this out, take this and bring that out, take the legs and we'll bring them down over here, and now we can close this section and then bring this in, come down to the bottom where we'll see the feet, and then we can bring both of them out, rotate this down, bring these pieces up, separate the legs. Now we can take this lens cap off, take this section, oh, not that section, take this section down, bring the rest of the lens up over here, and we can spread his arms, come over to the back. We're going to take this panel and flip that in there, as well as the one on this side. We're going to take this section off, and then if you can't see this slider, we need to shift this down. This does tab right into there. So now this piece should be underneath this head area, and we take this entire section and bring it down over there, and it should snap into place. There we go. Come to the arms, and they do tab into the side. I need to get them in there. Same with the one over here. Now for the rest of the lens, we just need to fold it down and bring it all the way up. And I really do like how that just compresses down. Now there is this section over here, which we do need to just push in if we can do that. There we go. It's a very basic step, but it does help make it symmetrical to this side. Now we can finally open up the arms, so that way we can take out the hands. Same with the one on this side and close that up. And now for our final optional touches, we can open this up, push this in, and then we can place the matrix into it. Make sure it is facing like this and just get that in there and close it up. Here is the robot mode, and he does look very interesting. But before we get further into this, I do want to talk about how I got this figure. This figure originally cost around $145, but I managed to get this for the equivalent of $66.41 plus shipping. The people over at Bai assisted me monetarily to be able to place a bid on this figure from a seller on Yahoo Japan auction. What's crazy is that no one else had placed a bid on this. You can find items on Bai for cheap in the Yahoo Japan auction section because like no one else is placing a bid on them. I got the Takara Transformers Millennium Falcon with the help from Bai as well for $70.43. Now Bai is basically a proxy buying service that lets you buy things from online Japanese exclusive retailers. And I picked the most expensive shipping option because they paid for it, so why not? But you can also pick cheaper shipping options that do take longer, and they'll also consolidate all your orders into one package and ship them to you. So you truly might be able to find your holy grail figures for a good price if you are lucky. There's a link for 10% off for new users below. Now back to the robot mode. So the robot mode, like I said, it's interesting. Honestly, it looks really silly, but they are turning a pre-existing camera into an action figure, and they did what they could, so I can't blame them for anything. And honestly, I think they did a pretty great job. I feel like it's a really fun and interesting concept. He has the classic Optimus Prime colors, the red and blue are great, and then you have the black body of the camera. He also has very little paint applications throughout him. Now let's take a closer look at the head sculpt of the figure. We can bring this down and out of the way so we can zoom in. The head sculpt on this figure is done very well. It is G1 Optimus, but it's a bit more stylized and angular. It gives it a more Japanese feel to it, if that makes sense. Like Japanese robots tend to have more angles and look sleek. Not fully a robot and actually a cyborg, but look at how sexy Genos is. Goddamn. Anyways though, it's a great head sculpt. I'm just not a big fan of the lens thing on his forehead. The silver paint application for the mouthpiece is nice, and it goes all the way up to around the eyes. And by the way, the light piping on this figure is excellent. It really makes him look alive, and then you can take that life away. Life, death, life, death! Overall, it's a pretty good head sculpt, and if you take a look at the back, that is the light piping area. Up in this area of the figure, not a whole lot to say really. I do want to mention, I like how they still painted the inside of all of this, the metallic silver. That is a nice touch. The arms are done very well. It is that classic G1 Optimus look to it, but they managed to add some extra panel work, which really helps accentuate the figure a lot more. You get the classic Optimus Prime shapes. I do like how nice, big, and blocky his arms are. Honestly, the aesthetic is great, and the large Autobot insignia on the arm is always an Optimus Prime classic. On the other side, he has the Canon logo, and I love that. But overall, the arms just look really good in my opinion. This bit of the arm does have some gaps to it, which kind of sucks considering this figure cost almost $150. This is Masterpiece Transformers money, and this figure is definitely not Masterpiece, especially considering it's not a Masterpiece figure. But I do feel for that price point, this should feel a little bit more hefty. There is no die-cast metal in this figure, it is all just plastic. But the plastic quality is pretty good. I just assumed the Canon licensing was a bit too expensive or something. Now I will say, if we bring this arm up, we will see, yeah, that's not too great. At this price, not great. The sculpt of the hands is pretty basic stuff, not a whole lot to say. 3 points of articulation, just like how a Masterpiece figure would. Now the main body of the figure does look kind of awkward, I will say that, but considering what they were working with here, it is pretty excusable, and I think they did the best job they could. You still can't see a lot of the camera detail on the figure, which is nice. On the chest, he wears the EOS R5 like a proud badge of honor. He's like, look at me, this is the camera you should use. Sorry, I'm a Sony fanboy now. It is awkward to have this lens piece sticking up, but considering earlier it was this long, I think it's pretty impressive how they managed to compress this down. Further down the legs, it's pretty much basic Optimus Prime stuff from here. You have the yellow bits on the crotch piece. I do like all the extra panel working they have on the legs and all that extra detail going on throughout it. It really makes the figure stand out a bit more, and I'm glad it's not just plain. Oh, and if we do bend the knee, we do get some detail over there. Coming down to the feet, these look pretty horrendous in my opinion. They're not that great. I honestly hate the feet on this. I guess they didn't have too much to work with, but man, it's just kind of lame. The figure holds together pretty well, and none of the joints are loose, which is good because in robot mode, it is pretty top heavy, and thankfully the legs are good enough to keep it in place and not fall over. I will say the side leg movements are a little loose, but nothing too big to complain about. Now turning the figure over to the back, there is a lot of kibble here, and then we get these awkward things which kind of look like wings, but honestly it's not that big of a deal considering what the figure is. In the back of the legs is pretty much a lot of the camera stuff. Now accessories wise, we can't open this up to take a closer look at the Matrix of Leadership if my hands can get on it. There we go. Now it is a very nice looking Matrix of Leadership, and it is entirely made of plastic, so it does feel very light, but the metallic silver and the orange paint job on here is done really well, and you get that translucent blue in the middle. And this is probably going to be my favorite accessory for a Transformers figure. You get an even smaller version of the Canon R5 camera, and this is also done really well. Like, they managed to add all the buttons and dials, and it just looks super impressive. Like, look at that. This is great to have, and I love it. There is a little tab over here, which connects to his right hand, although he is not cooperating with me right now. Okay, I managed to get it in, and honestly, this looks really hilarious to me. This is similar to the info bar Optimus Prime coming with a tiny cell phone.
So no head?
Now the lens cap is pretty unique because this is also a shield for the figure. We can tab it into this hand, and then he kind of holds it like this, so the logo is a bit sideways, so you kind of have to like rotate the hand, and that does look better. But now he's holding the shield kind of awkwardly. Now articulation wise, I am a little bit disappointed with this figure. Like, I really couldn't get a whole lot of variety in poses with this. So the head can move up and down. We do get a full spin on here. These arms can move out to the side over there. You can rotate them up, but this gets in the way, but it would be able to spin a full 360. Rotation at the arm, a single hinge joint for the elbow, but the bend is pretty good. This hand can move up and down, and it is on a ball joint. Masterpiece style movement for the fingers. Now this is where I'm a little bit disappointed. There is no waist rotation on this figure, and that kind of sucks, but the legs can move forward, out to the side, we go back there. Rotation, a 90-degree knee bend. The feet can move back and forth, but there is no foot pivot, so the articulation is just a little bit limited. Now overall, this is a very unique looking Transformers figure. The retail price of $150 is a little bit high, but as a photographer, I find the uniqueness of this figure to be really great. Now if you want to see another very interesting looking Optimus Prime figure, check out my cell phone info bar Optimus Prime review.